My channel. My name is Badass Benny, and if you are an ACE or AMAC or human sex trafficking survivor, you're in the right place. Today we're going to talk about, this is going to be for partners of women who've been sexually abused as children, and it's going to be part 1 of 2. And it is by Joan Spear. I'll be reading some things, and I'll explain some things about if there needs to be clarification. And if you want to, down below, you can put a comment if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. So this is written as a guide for all husband, lovers, or partners of women who were sexually abused as children. And sexually abused as children is from birth to 18 years old. It is intended to help you understand the long-range effects of sexual abuse and to be helpful to both of you in the process of her recovery. The majority of this article assumes that the adult abuser was male. This, however, is not always the case. Women can also be abusers, but their numbers are much fewer. Although this article is focused on women who were abused, many men were also abused by both female and male adults. This article does not pretend to cover all facets of the effects of childhood sexual abuse, but hopefully it will provide you with some answers to questions you may have. And remember, if you have questions, down below, I'll answer them for you. Best I can. If I don't know the answer, I will find it. This article does not pretend to cover all facets of the effects of childhood sexual abuse, but hopefully it will provide you with some answers to the questions you have. I just read that. And that will happen sometimes. The problem: sexual abuse is not something that any of us like to think about, yet the most recent statistics state that 1 woman in 3 were abused as a child. This means it is common occurrence. Most people who have been abused say that the abuse had devastating effects on them as children, and that these effects have lasted into adulthood. In fact, the damage is so severe that many women do not recall the actual events until they are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or beyond. The coping mechanisms that they use to survive emotionally as children, such as isolation, drug use, or passivity, stay in place until adulthood. These coping mechanisms frequently allow women to blank out painful childhood events. I believe in boys it's 1 in 7, and I believe the statistics are higher. You can look up the federal statistics. However, I do again think it's higher because girls seem to tend to talk more than boys, and sometimes it's hard for boys to know that that was rape, and that's another video that we will do. Why would anyone want to blank out the past? Sexual molestation of a child is so devastating that it invades the very soul of that child. Often, in order to get through the event, the child learns to separate herself from her body and to pretend that it is not even there. It is as if the abuse is happening to someone else. In the adult life, this is experienced as memory loss. It is a protective measure. If a woman does not remember the abuse, then it seems as though it didn't happen, and she doesn't have to deal with it. Why is she remembering now after all these years? Remembering the abuse is different for each woman. Sometimes an attempted or actual rage will trigger memories. Sometimes a dream will seem all too real, and we will precipitate it with memory. Sometimes a woman will burst into uncontrollable tears while at a movie or upon hearing someone else's childhood story because she suddenly experiences her own memories. Sometimes it's just a vague feeling that will stir a woman to deeper. Or it could be a look or a touch that causes tension, discomfort, and the feeling that similar looks or touches have happened before. But why does she need to remember it all? It's over and done with. Shouldn't she just get on with her life? It would be nice if life were that simple. Unfortunately, any unfinished business from childhood does affect adult attitudes, feelings, behaviors, and relationships. Unfinished business is any event or interaction that was not resolved satisfactorily at the time it happened. A few very fortunate women who had parents or teachers who believed them and saw it, that they were protected, therefore, from further sexual abuse, may not have scars that affect their adult lives. Most women are not that fortunate, however, and therefore need to get in touch with their pain in order to deal with it and put it to rest. This is very much like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and which some Vietnam veterans suffer from now, 20 years after the trauma they experienced in the war, because they had no outlets for their feelings at the time. The problems remain with them, that they need treatment now in order to be at peace with themselves. Well, how do I know her memories of the abuse are accurate? My partner has a very vivid imagination. There is no way to know for sure. However, there's a very little reason for making up these stories. The obvious pain that accompanies the retelling is strong evidence that the memories are real. Many women have also been able to check with siblings and other relatives who reveal that they were too molested by the same person. But my wife isn't even sure herself that she isn't making it all up. This is a common feeling. Many sexually abused children are told that they are lying, that Uncle Charlie or Daddy couldn't possibly be molesting them. If no one will talk about it, the child gets the feeling that maybe she has made it all up, since that's what she'd like to believe also. That feeling continues when real memories occur, both as a child and as an adult. Well, why is she, why does she keep digging at it? First it was her stepfather, then her uncle, and now her brother. The common need to know the whole truth about our past seems to be a common human trait. It is somewhat like an adopted child who grows up and leaves no stone unturned to find his or her parents. It is also important for women who were abused as children to know as much as they can about the abuse so they can better understand their complex actions and feelings today. Most women sexually abused as children can't rest until the facts of the abuse are known. It was the only one event. Why should that one be so devastating? It is devastating because sexual abuse is a total invasion of one's body and privacy. Most often the perpetrator is someone the child knows and trusts. If the abuser is a family member, then it is someone whom the child especially trusts and looks to for protection. Sexually abused children feel betrayed. They live in fear that the abuse will happen again. As adults, they feel they lost their innocence too soon, grew up too fast, and were robbed of their childhood. Let's stop. We're going to do one more. But he only fondled her genitals. It isn't as if she had intercourse with her. There is no such thing as fondled. He fondled her genitals, and that in itself is a crime. He may, in fact, not have touched her at all, confining his sexual advances to lewd and suggestive remarks. This can be devastating too. If a child has been subjected to years of painful sexual intercourse, then she has been more traumatized than someone who has been fondled a few times. In both cases, however, the emotional scars run deep. Everybody deals with sexual assault. They cope with it differently. Everybody, it's how you cope. And that's where we come in, is why some sexual assault survivors who perpetrate on some children later in life and some don't, it's how you cope. She must have been a very provocative and sexual child. Most children who are sexually abused are neither. Children don't ask to be abused any more than adults do. And some children may cuddle with adults, seeking non-sexual attention and caressing, or some who have already been abused may appear seductive because they learn this is the only way to get any attention at all. In any case, adults are solely responsible for the abuse they inflict on children. Even a well-developed 13 or 14-year-old who's parading around scantily clothed is not asking for it. Abuse is not the penalty for poor judgment. It always goes back onto the perpetrator. Always goes back. Not on the survivor or the victim at the time. And remember, I say victim is when the person's dead, but the person is surviving it. Now, as a teen, they got victimized. They're going through it. So we don't need to be saying you asked for it. It's not. That's one of the worst things you could say to someone. I think she probably enjoyed the attention anyway. If this was the only way she got any attention at all, then she may have enjoyed the aspect of what happened. But dread and fear and disgust and confusion and the pain were also present. This is one reason why therapy takes as long as it does. The adult who was a victim as a child often feels ashamed and guilt and responsible for the sexual abuse because there was a part of her that needed the attention. This still does not make her responsible for the abuse. And the little girl inside needs to be convinced of that. But why didn't she just scream or something? She may have been so frightened and confused. She was afraid to make any sound at all. Since abusers are usually bigger and stronger than the children they molest, it would have been easy to overpower her. Also, she had probably been taught to obey whatever an adult asked her to do. Typically, abusers make dire threats or bribe children so that they silence and compliance seem like the only safe choices. Why didn't she tell her mom or dad? She may have tried to and was silenced or not believed. She may have known from previous experience that her mother would not listen or that she would be more in trouble if she did tell. The abuser may have threatened to harm her or her mother if she told. Or she may have feared a split in the family if she said anything. The reason victims tell us that they want the abuse to stop, they usually don't want to be removed from the house or have their father and brother or relative put in jail. In some families, the mother is also abusing the child. So the child feels she has no plan to turn. Now we're going to stop there, and I'm going to ask you all, what are you going to do to take care of yourself today? And I ask you that you remember, if you're working on your sexual assault issues, that you have your support system together, your therapist, it could be a person that you trust, and if you feel like you want to harm yourself, you call 911. Or you call that suicide hotline. I love you, and thank you for listening.